Welcome to Busy Brain Club, where thinking is free and we should do more of it. I'm a little under the weather, but this story is so good, I could not resist. Florida Governor Ron Desantis wants to ban CBDCs in Florida. Here's what you need to know. For those who don't know what CBDCs are, it's central bank digital currency. And why is that a big deal? Well, the whole idea of a central bank digital currency is to solve, this is from their perspective, is to solve the problem of putting money where it needs to go. So as we have it now in the United States, if the economy goes into turmoil for whatever reason, say you have 9/11 and the airline industry is crashing, or we have the pandemic and the cruise line industry and the restaurant industry is crashing, the government has to spend money to stimulate those areas of the economy. And the government spent a lot of money and it just went. But the efficiency of it being able to prop up those industries isn't exactly precise. The banking sector looks at the data and says, well, we need the restaurants, we need help with the restaurants, we need help with the cruise industry. For argument's sake, let's keep it simple. There is no way for them to target those groups specifically when you're just giving the money away, because you want to give it to the people who are spending the money. You don't want to give it directly to the industry, because that in itself would break the whole idea of capitalism. So what you do, you give the people the money to spend. Problem is, a person, even though you tell them that's what you're going to spend the money on, they'll spend it on whatever. They'll buy stocks in Tesla, or they'll buy cryptocurrencies. And so when the Federal Reserve and the government comes together and decides, say, we have $1 trillion stimulus package, maybe 10% of it actually goes into the industry specifically that is getting hurt altogether, because everybody got their hands out. The idea of a central bank digital currency is so they could target those specific areas by giving you the money straight from the Federal Reserve. It's not passed to the government, signed into a bill that adds more stuff, and then passed to the bank. It doesn't go that way. You have an account with the Federal Reserve itself. It'll be equivalent to the money that you already have in your account. So it'll still be US dollars. It'll just be a central bank digital currency. And what that gives them the tool to do is turn off the money. That's one. It gives them the tool to give you money that you have to spend within a specific time, and it's restricted to a particular industry. If the automobile industry is getting hurt, they could give you a $5,000 grant or so, and you have to buy an automobile with it, and that will help prop up the automobile industry instead of giving you just the general money that you could use to do anything else. So or give you rebates, tax rebates on vehicle. The more accurate and the more programmatic way to distribute the money was to give you the money and have a time frame on it. So in the event you don't use the money disappears out the system, and it will have a more controlled effect and won't affect the inflation rate of the broad money supply as much, because the excess money isn't pushed into other products to raise the prices. I don't know if that makes sense. But anyways, let's get back to the article, because one, I don't know if this is actually true. This is an article that publicly says his stance on the central bank. He is at odds with the policies of the central bank, and he's not supporting the ideas that's pushing the central bank. No, the central bank runs everything. They have an infinite supply of money. So I beg the question, what on his side, what is his game plan? Because if you're saying no to the central bank and how they police things, it's one of two things. One, you don't want them to have that much control over the money, because you yourself want the flexibility to move money how you want to move it. So I can see it from his perspective, like, screw that. You're not going to tell me how I'm going to spend my money in the state that I'm running. The next question is, To go against the central bank is almost like going against the big banks of the world, Citibank, JP Morgan, a Bank of America. Like, you're going against those entities that control the US central bank and all the policies and all the money that runs through New York from around the world. Like, all that stuff that Wall Street, you're going against that whole system. So the question is, does he actually know the kind of war that he's going to start? And don't get me wrong, he's not the first politician that has made this statement. Ted Cruz was a big Bitcoiner and he made statements about CBDCs, but he wasn't as aggressive. He was more a proponent of supporting the idea of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin specifically. When I look at the playing field, I'm wondering to myself, like, what is it that he know that I don't know? Anyways, let's read the article to get some more information. Florida Governor Ron Desantis announced Monday from behind a podium that propped up a green sign saying, he even got a sign that says Big Brother Digital Dollar, plans to introduce legislation that would ban any central bank digital currency issued by the United States for use in Florida. The bill would prohibit the use of a federally adopted CBDC as money within Florida's Uniform Commercial Code, institute protections against a central global currency by prohibiting any CBDCs by a foreign reserve or sanctioned central bank, and called on likelihood states to join in adopting similar legislation. The Biden administration, this is a quote, the Biden administration's efforts to inject a central bank digital currency is about surveillance and control, said Desantis in a press release, which is true. Your ability to control when the money is spent and where it's spent is a form of control. In order for you to do that, you have to know who has the money and where the money is. So it'll be money that is tracked. According to DeSantis, a federally controlled CBDC would give government officials the ability to see all customers' activity and even cut off access to goods and services for consumers. However, the Federal Reserve has made no decision to implement or pursue a CBDC. That's what they tell us. You never know what's going on behind the scenes. The Institute has spent time exploring potential benefits and risks from all angles. In its most recent published paper on the topic, the Federal Reserve said if one were to create it, it would need to best serve the needs of the United States by being privacy protected, intermediate, widely transferable, and identity verified. That's basically putting everybody into this control where they know who has it, how much you have, where you've spent it. They'll be able to pull a lot of data together. What is CBDC? The Federal Reserve defines CBDC as a digital form of central bank money widely available to the general public. In the US, there are two types of central bank money: physical money issued by the Federal Reserve and digital balances held by commercial banks at the Federal Reserve. Central bank money is money the central bank is liable for. Digital currency isn't a new idea. Most people have bank accounts, use payment apps, and have made purchases online. A CBDC is different in that the liability will be held by the Federal Reserve rather than a commercial bank. Central bank digital currency is a bad idea because it leads down this path where you have one entity that is all seeing of all financial transactions. At least as we currently have it, the person who has visibility on our financial transactions is the commercial banks, and the Federal Reserve has visibility on the spendings of the commercial banks, and the commercial banks has visibility on our spending. So there is some level of separation. The Federal Reserve don't know exactly what you spent your money on. Bank of America probably does, but the Federal Reserve doesn't. To have a CBDC would mean we eliminate the commercial banks altogether. So a question you could ask yourself is there a civil war being fought within the banking system between commercial banks and the central bank, because the central bank is trying to make the commercial banks irrelevant, in so being their autonomy. Even if there were central banks in a world where there's a CBDC, they're just an extension of the Federal Reserve. They wouldn't have autonomy to do what they want to do, because the Federal Reserve will dictate everything. So this is wild, and this is a big story, and I don't see a lot of people covering it. But the fact that he puts out this, like, why would he put out his stance on CBDCs at this point in time? I generally don't trust politicians, and I usually feel, this is how I usually feel about politicians. I don't know if you remember Geostorm.
Excuse me?
People like you need people like me. You know why? So you can take credit for everything we accomplished.
With Gerald Butler. I don't really trust politicians. I kind of default to the sentiment expressed in Geostorm. He made a speech in the beginning, and I'll play a little clip of it so you understand how I feel about politicians.
So you can go to your constituents
This meeting
and
is
your
adjourned.
cronies and your mistresses and puff out your chest and
Sit
say,
down,
hey,
please.
look at me.
I'm a supporter of Bitcoin because I know what Bitcoin is. Most people don't. Their introduction to Bitcoin is more from the technological side of things, and it will go over most people's heads. But the purpose of Bitcoin is to eliminate the middleman. Anyways, that is my reading of this. It's interesting, and I like it, because it doesn't matter who's fighting on the side of Bitcoin or decapitating the enemy of Bitcoin. I don't care.